So the story about the Traitors is basically that there is racial bias in it. There is a social video doing the rounds at the moment, which will kind of pop on the screen, just a few screenshots from it. But it was liked by people like Alison Hammond, who was like spot on. And the guy in the video kind of goes through the theory of the people of color are sort of always round tabled out first. And I
Yeah.
would say Traitors, I think, is an incredibly diverse show, not just racially, but also a lot of people with visible disabilities in there, a lot of gays, a lot of LGBT people. So it's certainly not something that's ever set up to in any way have any pieces of prejudice. It's a very diverse show. But I mean, I've got people close to me that are like, did the black person go first? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yes. You know, and it's like, oh, is this, it's a very interesting concept. As someone that's mixed race, I am very cautious about overusing the word racism and always jumping on that because I have a lot of respect for, well, not respect, but that word holds a lot of power and
Yeah.
I don't want to misuse it. And I certainly don't want to be one of those people that runs around saying everything they don't like is racist. But at the same time, there clearly is a trend here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I think you'd probably be called like an unconscious bias that's coming through because you can't really ignore it, right? If it happened once in one season, you could kind of argue it was just that player did something that made people distrust them. But when it happens so quickly and seemingly with very little reasoning behind it, right? We saw it in the celebrity Traitors even with two people of color were the first people eliminated. I think it was Nico and Tamika. We've seen it with this season, Judy being the first person banished. We saw it in previous seasons. I can't remember which season it was, but there was I believe a doctor called Kaz, and instantly people didn't trust him. And they couldn't really put their finger on why they didn't trust him. They just didn't trust him. It's actually a really uncomfortable first few episodes to watch because very quickly he became isolated from the rest of the group. Like they know how much of this is just editing versus reality, but there were shots of him walking around the castle looking for groups to be part of, and he couldn't find a group to be part of. And that was really kind of heartbreaking because he hadn't done anything realistic as a viewer anyway. And we don't know what goes on in that castle versus kind of what we see on TV. But to a viewer, they hadn't done anything that you would think would have caused that level of suspicion. But clearly they had, and they kind of seemingly had given up by the time they finally got banished. And of course, they were faithful. So I think it is a really clear trend that is happening. And it's happened in other versions. I think in the US version, I believe Peppermint in one of the seasons was the first person eliminated, and they've said that there could have been an unconscious bias at play there as well as a person of color and a trans individual. So I think it's definitely there. I don't know how you solve for it, right? Like, as you're the producers of the show, how do you solve it? Because you can't necessarily, and I'm not the best person to speak to this, but you can't necessarily bring everyone in and say, hey, be very conscious of your unconscious bias. We've seen this trend in previous seasons. We want to make sure it doesn't happen. Because then theoretically, they can't pick a person of color as a traitor because they've almost told everyone don't vote for that person. So they don't want to get involved, I guess.
You've hit the nail on the head is kind of how do you correct for this? Because I'm actually assuming as part of a BBC show, they would have actually had unconscious bias training, even for something like this. So I don't know. I could be wrong. I would assume it's the BBC. It's their flagship show. They're gonna have like loads of things on hand, like mental health support and everything like that. If it all gets too much, they're not. We've seen, unfortunately, really disastrous ends to people that have been on TV shows, reality TV shows. I feel like the BBC are not going to make that mistake with their flagship show. So I think that there's definitely going to have been a lot of that stuff done. But at the same time, you're right in the sense that if you suspect that person, they happen to be a person of color or disabled or gay, is that going to play in future seasons where people think, I don't want to be one of those people that votes out the person of color first, so I'm not going to. But then that person ends up actually being the traitor. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's a very hard thing to sort of correct for. It's one of those things where I'm actually interested in hearing people's thoughts online of, well, how do you think you correct this? Because, people will also be able to point for, well, here are all the seasons where they kicked out white straight men first. And, at the moment, there is one white, maybe straight, I don't know, guy that is in tears because he just can't convince them that he's faithful. It's like, it's kind of hard for anyone in that. I actually,
100%.
last night watching it was the first time where I was like, you know what, if I was in his position, I'd just be like, just vote me out because this is unfair.